Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larosiliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve Larosiliere. Today's guest is Rowan Ward from Rowan Ward Designs in Chicago. How you doing, Rowan?
Hi, Steve. Yeah, going well. Real well. All good.
Hey, why don't you tell everybody about how'd you get into this business?
Right. Yeah. Well, going way back to when I started out in Australia, where I'm from, my native hometown of Sydney. Growing up there, both my parents were artists, so I had a pretty heavily influenced kind of childhood of watching my dad tinker around with wood and jigsaws and sculptures and what, and that was the childhood, watching him kind of tinker around in the workshop or in the back shed. It was actually there. And then getting into high school, I took art and woodwork as two kind of subjects that I really did well at, having that kind of childhood base. And then the big catalyst was getting into woodwork and furniture as a career, was going off to art school and studied under an amazing teacher, late great George Ingham, who was part of the Australian National University. And that was a 4-year bachelor's degree, and I really took to it like I could have sat there and done 8 years of it. It was such an amazing kind of program and a course where they really set you up as furniture makers, and the whole design aspect of it as well, where you get a big skill set. You're doing the hand tools, you're doing the machines, and then you come away with a degree in furniture design. And it was a bit of a baptism of fire, because afterwards it was then learning how to run a business from it. So fast forwarding through all my kind of youth and childhood of like being interested in woodwork, I wanted to do something with this degree, and got the opportunity to run a workshop more or less straight out of art school. I was in my early mid-20s and went into with another mate of mine who actually is in that same workshop still to this day back in Australia.
Okay.
And just got my word out there and started saying I'm a furniture maker, and waving my hand in the air trying to get people to buy furniture from me. And it all worked out. I mean, that was 20 years ago, but 30 now. But got into it, loved it, and have always kind of wanted to maintain that kind of aspect of really nice high-end furniture and integrity, I suppose, in all the processes that's involved. And I put that back to my teacher, my college teacher, who was just such a guru, real fine woodworker who really kind of set the bar high. And that's really, me carrying on that mantle, and trying to keep that upheld and wanting to carry that on. So I got into it as a kid, and have now 30 years later started this business, and it's going well, and I've ended up in Chicago, and it's a good fit.
That's great. So it says on your website that your wife is originally from Chicago. That's how you ended up here.
Well, that's it. That's the caveat of moving from sunny Sydney to snowy Chicago. I met my wife in London, and we got married and moved here, and that was all of 17 years ago. But in hindsight, it's been a great fit for my career, because I put it down to there's a lot more people in America and Chicago alone People are spending money on the insides of their homes, and because it's a colder climate.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas people in Sydney are at the beach and at the restaurants and stuff, so there's more of a kind of trend to be outside and in that kind of lifestyle versus the interiors of the big homes here in Chicago. So me as a furniture maker is a really good fit.
Yeah.
And I find I've loved Chicago. It's a great city. Yeah.
I was. It's funny. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's moving from New York to Chicago, and I told them jokingly, "Don't move to Chicago. It's not a good city." And 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 the joke is that it is a really great city. it's a,
That's it. That's
it's a
it.
it's a
I agree. I
it's a
mean,
really great
it's
city.
it's
It's not New York. It's not LA. It's got its own character and
that's right.
vibe, and it's
Absolutely. And I think it's great in that the scale of it is a big city, which it needs for, people like myself in woodwork and furniture and carpentry, that it needs a market that is big enough
hmm
and it's also not as hectic or crazy as the scale of New York or LA.
yeah.
So it kind of feels like, and then, things like when I got here and finding out all about the merchandise mart and going, there's a whole huge ass building that's like exactly for furniture people and designers and cabinetry. It's like it was a great fit for that city as well.
I'm curious. You just moved, from London to Chicago. How did you start building your business here? Like, how did you get the name out? And like, the I think if you look at the trend now, maybe people are looking at designing brands versus like a name. So your company is your name versus like a
Mhm.
brand. Like, what can you talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a good question, Steve. I mean, honestly, like having the kind of where I came from, working for myself straight out of college and saying, I'm Rowan Ward and I make furniture.
Yeah.
I kind of held that mantle. When I got here, I really was starting from scratch because it was, no one knew me. I didn't know Chicago. No one knew, it was a real ground zero for me. And I literally got a job out of the Craigslist classifieds looking for a furniture maker or furniture finish. It was a furniture maker in a little Polish shop on the west side of Chicago, and I got my foot in the door with that,
hmm
and that was my first and only opening to seeing the kind of scene in Chicago of meeting designers, seeing the clientele that these people were working with, which was a lot of restoration work and a lot of a bit of upholstery and all that stuff, but it wasn't really my jam. But I essentially ran the kind of custom workshop part of that business.
hmm
And after 3 years, I was like, look, I can do all this myself. Being, I was essentially estimating jobs, I was doing the jobs, I was delivering the jobs, and getting my face in front of clients and people. So I then just said, look, the plan was always to go out and work for myself versus working for the man. And yeah, I think at that point I just decided to say, this is who I am, and it's not really like coming up with a catchy kind of branded name and saying I'm blah blah designs. It was just me and sticking behind who I am, and kind of that really is the kind of the basis of my kind of small business, is that I am the product. I stand behind the work. I make it. I deliver it. I service calls if needed, and have that relationship with the clients. So it is all me versus clicking on the website and saying it's made in Indiana, and this is this is the kind of brand. So it's a much more personal service, a bit more small scale,
hmm
but
hmm
that's kind of what I feel like I stand behind, just being the name versus a brand.
Yeah, yeah, no, I got it. So it's almost like just personal branding before personal branding was a thing, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
show up and
possibly.
you like
Yeah, I
you
don't
are the
know. I mean,
product, right? And you're
yeah, yeah. I mean, I do remember kind of thinking, can I come up with a catchy name that could
you
be
thought you did that
something.
was in your head before.
Yeah, no, it did. It crossed my mind, and there was a kind of a vague reference to back where I grew up on the south coast of Australia, and I was going to do that, and then I just thought, this is it. It's my name. This is who I am. I'm doing it. So it just became Rowan Ward Designs LLC. So
Yeah, yeah,
it.
that's awesome. So,
Yeah,
when you first came here, you just started. Did you start working in a shop? Did you just start answering? Like, how did you get
yeah,
your? Who do you remember who your first client was?
yeah. Well, so it was a bit of the journeyman kind of process from leaving Sydney to London, doing it 3 years in London where I met my wife. And then once we packed up there and moved here to start over, I had had my tools, well, a handful of tools, but they'd come with me. And then like I said, I got this job out of in the west side of Chicago in a kind of little cool little wood workshop,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fortunate enough where this business had their foot in the door with a fair few high end clients, and they were dealing with nice high end residential um, furniture clients in Chicago and mostly downtown and Lincoln Park and whatnot. And I remember it was can we make this table, and the kind of the shop drawing comes to me and says here's the design, and a lot of it was kind of reproduction furniture. So I was kind of like, yeah, we can make that and start doing it. And we sourcing wood and finding out where all the nice veneer is and all the kind of sources around Chicagoland. And then once I executed the job and deliver it, and the clients are happy, and you start seeing that kind of process, it was really seeing that there was a healthy market of that in Chicago, and people wanting kind of custom made things, and then like I said, meeting designers and the clients along the way just made me feel like I could kind of do it all myself versus working for someone
Yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
what aspect? So, did you fall into like a particular niche of products that you were developing, or did you just people like,
Um,
I want this, and you're like, all right, I'll make it.
yeah, I mean, a part of like working for the man and having a job, I was kind of forced to make, not forced. I would make whatever they kind of had on the table, or during the schedule that was like, we need this cabinet made, or we need an armoire made, or we need a bed made. There was just things like that. But as far as my personal kind of aesthetic and desire, I suppose I was more into tables. Tables are kind of my jam. I feel like they're a great focal point in any house. Everyone kind of wants a nice dining table, and they're a kind of they're a cool challenge for me from an aesthetic point of view to try and come up with something that hasn't been done before, but also they're in that kind of perfect scale, as in you can manage to make them on your own. They're also a nice ticket item. They're not like selling a small end
Yeah,
table, and they're freestanding furniture versus kind of the built-ins and the cabinetry and the kitchens, which I still do and can do all that. I just feel like where I've come from in my training as a furniture maker, I try and honour that to its name, being making freestanding furniture versus cabinetry.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what? So where did you end up moving your first workshop to? Just the north side of.
So yeah, it was kind of 3 years of working in this little this Polish shop in the West Loop, or west of kind of Fulton Market there, and kind of just getting antsy and wanting to get it. I think we just had our first kid, and we were like, you know got to jump in and go into business, and the perfect storm when you've got a mortgage and a baby and no one knows who you are. And I thought, yeah, this is the perfect time to start a furniture business. And that was actually 2009 ish, 2011 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2011 it was. That kind of just after that big crash in 2008. But anyway, I'd just been sniffing around looking for spaces, and there's a lot of that kind of semi-industrial areas around the west of Chicago. But we were always kind of moving to the burbs eventually, and my wife's family's from up here on the North Shore, and I just got really lucky through a contact through my mother-in-law that there was this shop where I'm still at today after 12 years. That it's this funny little pocket of Wilmette, and there was a guy who'd just left the space that was into building bars, and he'd built a lot of pubs and bars.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd just gone, and I got in touch with the owner of the building, and he's like, "Look, it's me, no, it's only me, but there's a whole we got thicknesses, planers, dust extraction, table saw, everything's kind of set up." But it was absolutely perfect. Like, it was for me to have the kind of overhead to go in and an empty shell and try and set that up was going to be a whole lot more. So I got really lucky with the timing, and it was up in the suburbs, and I thought that that's where I want to, we'll go eventually once we, had started having kids. So yeah, I just got lucky with finding this little space, and it's a kind of little pocket in the suburbs versus being kind of in an industrial area of Skokie or, you know, down in the city or whatnot. So yeah, stuck with it, and it's not too massive. It's probably 2,500 square feet, but it does the job. And up here, I'm in my little mezzanine office, and it's the only downside is when I want to scale and get big jobs like big millwork jobs. It's kind of a bit tight,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have some resources out west at another shop where I can lean on those guys to for that kind of work.
Uh, what was your approach to growing the business?
Growing the bit, it's really I've had a whole lot of these kind of people wanting to sell me ads and stuff in magazines and all that, and it's really always come back to just kind of standing behind the product. Every job sells. It's the next job being, it's word of mouth. It is that kind of small business model. But once I've gotten in with, a handful of good designers, where a lot of the time my name gets passed around through those circles, or at,
Mm-hmm.
wine and cheese nights in the merchandise mart and stuff, and who's a maker or who's a kind of shop guy that they could rely on. And every job that I've done, I've really kind of been, you know, proud of the fact that it's the selling point of the job of my business,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of carries itself. Whereas, the dining table arrives to the nice house in Glencoe, their friends talk about it. Then it's like, who made your table, and it's a kind of word of mouth thing. So I've been probably, a little lackadaisy on advertising and marketing myself, but it's always that kind of dilemma of going too big and upscaling with, more employees and the whole scale of the business, or keeping it kind of small enough where it is more personalized and it's all me, kind of, it's just me doing it.
Do you have anybody that's part of your team right now?
Yeah, I've got a couple of subs who I, do shop time, and that's been helpful because there is only so many hours in the day where I can make tables.
Yeah,
um, and it gets pretty, it's physical, and I'm getting, I just hit 47, and I'm probably a bit over the fact of slinging around 4 by 8 sheets of plywood and MDF. But and I kind of like to, be up here and design and do the business side of things. But no, I've got a couple of guys that, and at the end of the day, though, it all does come down to that kind of the finishing touch and the quality of the piece that's going out the door. And I really need to put my hand on it to make sure it is that level, because
yeah,
that's often been the case where, as as much as employees as you get, do they really care enough as much as you do?
yeah.
And that kind of level of, quality is really what I'm trying to uphold, and consider myself the pointy end of the market with high end furniture that is really nicely made, and I can't kind of compromise that. So often I end up kind of making sure it isn't, just shipped out and subbed out to someone else.
Yeah,
Uh, but I have a couple of finishers as well, which do all the nice finishing work, which I'm not that psyched about. So I like having that, made, sanded, and off it goes to my
finish.
masterclass finish. Yeah, and they can do all the magic with the staining and the sanding and all the dirty work.
That's incredible. So like you stay focused on the crafts, like
Yeah,
some of your team, or I mean, what are they gluing up and sanding, or like what are they?
Yeah, like there's so much to it in the process of woodworking, as I'm sure you know that there's breaking down cheap goods, measuring, cutting, all the rest of it. But just the simple tasks of feeling confident they can
Yeah.
handle assembly, cutting, machining, like dimensioning wood, getting some rough sawn boards into S4S boards that we could start sanding and
Yeah.
joining. But it's all that stuff to making and putting the thing together. Just knowing the wood, there's so much to it, and it does take years and years of just getting your head around wood in general, just to know how it goes together, and then pulling off the piece where it can be sanded. And that's the other thing. Sanding's a whole nother world. Like you can say scrub it down like
Yeah.
a deck, or understanding grit and grain and raising the grain, and there's so much to it. So
Yeah. Hey everyone, Steve here. I've been thinking a lot about how we can all push our wood businesses forward, especially in these times when adapting and innovating are more important than ever. That's why I'm thrilled to introduce something brand new from Woodpreneur Podcast, and it's the Woodpreneur Live Sawmill and Lumber Business Summit. Mark your calendars for May 17th because we're creating a space where you can dive deep into the latest strategies for marketing, branding, and scaling your business. And here's the cool part. It's entirely up to you how you want to experience this. Join us virtually from your workshop or in person at Woodmiser in Portland, Oregon. Either way, you're going to be part of a community looking to grow and thrive together. This summit is the kickoff to our Woodpreneur Live series, focusing on bringing actionable insights to every niche within the woodworking and sawmill and lumber industry business owners. And you're up first. We got a lineup that's going to blow you away. Real talk from real experts who understand the nitty gritty of our trade. You want in? Head over to woodpreneur.com/live. Once again, that's woodpreneur.com/live to get on the wait list. Being on this list means that you get first dibs on registration because space will be limited. I look forward to seeing you at one of the upcoming Woodpreneur Lives, and head over and get yourself registered. Take care.
uh,
Do you still,
yeah,
do you
no,
still enjoy
getting to that
sanding
point.
at this stage of your career?
Say
Do you
again,
still
Steve.
enjoy sanding at this stage of your career?
No, not
Yeah.
really. I mean, I like there's a great English percussionist called I can't remember his name now, but there's a song called the Sandpaper Blues, and I always hear myself talking about that
Yeah.
once I'm in the stages of sanding. But look, it's one of the fundamentals that is super important to furniture making and furniture in general.
Yeah.
So you've got to know how to do it, and I don't know. There is a bit of a kind of rhythmic kind of thing to it once you get into it, but it kind of hurts your hands.
If I think it's good if you want to learn a second language or get some other listen, catch
Yeah,
up
that's
on some
right. That's right.
audiobooks, right? Like it's a good
Yeah,
yeah, I always
yeah.
tell people it's one of the first things that you can outsource, is
That's
the
right. Yeah,
sanding.
no, that's right. It is the case. But I had a kid during a summer a few years back who was a kid out of Nutria, and I was like, oh, this is going to be perfect for doing the hard yards and sanding and doing all the shit around the shop. And he basically was there just looking at his phone, one hand sanding with the other, and I'm like, look, this is where we're at with these young kids
Yeah.
who just didn't have the interest in it, obviously. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's tricky.
What's the how so right now like what's your backlog of work right now?
Well, like the I've always felt this kind of there's a bit of anxiety where it's like, does the phone ring? Do the emails come in where I get new jobs and without really advertising and letting people know I'm here? But sure enough, there's just like I mean, probably on a weekly basis, I get probably two to three requests for new jobs,
Mhm.
and they can be as small as a couple of end tables to a huge built-in case goods type of job or a big dining
Yeah.
table. Uh, So I always feel like the jobs are there, and I'm trying to get to a point where I can saying no more than saying yes to work, whereas I can find the nice jobs and price point versus just saying yes to work as work.
Hmm.
So backlog, I mean, typically, if you said, "Can you make me a table tomorrow?" I'd probably say it's 12 to 14 weeks is a kind of general lead
Yeah.
time. Um, and in that, we there's the dialogue of getting the job started. We get shop drawings made, then we mark them up, we revise them, then they're approved. Then it's sourcing materials, get deposits. There's getting all that off the ground, and then offering finish samples, going through that. There's a few stages of getting the right finish thereafter. Um, Fabricating is usually the kind of quickest part of it all,
Yeah.
and then it's depending again on the scale of the job, and also if metals involved, sometimes leather. I do a bit of work with some vellum and goat skin and steel, and that all kind of factors in. And then shipping them away. And I just had 7 or 8 pieces actually go off to Boston last week, and that was
Oh,
there's designers who have these clients around the countryside,
sure,
so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of nice.
There's a Chicago designer with a Boston client.
Yeah, yeah, and there's also a couple that Chicago-based designers who have clients in Florida, and a few pieces have gone down there.
Yeah.
So it's always it's nice to know and exciting, but also kind of nerve-wracking at the same time, knowing that when it's on the truck, it's hopefully not coming back or it gets damaged or all that kind of stuff because
Yeah. You hope the
shipping.
white glove is truly white glove and they're
That's
not
right. That's
damaging.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
That's
yeah,
fascinating. And also too considering that like it almost seems like your craftsmanship is really the selling point, and your your maybe your hands-on touch and care with
yeah,
somebody that is selling you, like the designer, like your
yep,
relationship with them and them trusting you and your craftsmanship, and them almost, so it's almost like you're selling the designer, and then the designer's really selling you to the
yes.
client, right?
No, I think that's the case, Steve. Because I think there's a ton of great woodworkers out there. There's a ton of great mill workers, and they all do high quality work. And it's really not for me to say like I'm competing from a price point thing with them on that level of like I can do a kitchen for cheaper or whatever. It's saying like I've got this formal training in furniture design.
Yeah.
I'm pretty geeked out about wood in general and making wood look pretty, and yeah, standing behind the product on how it's put together and saying that the tables I'll make are going to outlast your grandkids because they're that well made versus saying they've done for this amount of dollars that's going to get you a product because they are a kind of generational piece that I stand behind and hope that the integrity is in there in every step of the making, the sanding, and the finishing, and really trying to make a nice product.
That's really really cool, and I feel like, I mean, I just talked to a guy the other day, um, he's a trained designer, and there's like, even just looking at your work and how you take pictures of your work. It's almost,
Yeah,
what I mean, right? There's
sure,
a way to communicate the craftsmanship from the angles that you take, and I see
absolutely.
a big
Yeah.
difference between
Okay. Good.
folks that aren't sort of trained as designers,
Yep.
or like furniture makers, than, you know what I mean, because anybody
Yeah.
can take a photo, but it
Sure.
takes a person with a trained eye to take the photo of the thing that shows the piece. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
No, absolutely. And I think on that, I've always thought, the line of work I'm in this business is that it's a very visually exciting and cool product and thing to look at. Like it's not like pages of words. It's a very cool 3-dimensional
Yeah,
object,
yeah,
and colors of the wood and the angles and the design that you can get into.
yeah,
I've always thought it lends itself really well to the websites or the Instagram of trying to get cool photos of nice products.
yeah.
And I suppose my website's fairly outdated. I've really got to get on that, but my Instagram's kind of turned into the more, you know, instant website where I can just upload photos, stories and whatnot of just workshop moments,
Yeah.
and then it kind of shows the journey to the end product, and then the kind of nice shot in the house or such. So yeah, no, I've always kind of had a thing for that, and looking with a careful eye about how to photograph a piece on the 45 angle versus flat on
Yeah,
or
yeah,
straight
yeah,
down,
yeah. I
because
noticed. Yeah, the
there is that kind of
45
like,
with the tilt. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and you get the perspective of it, and the shadows and the kind of the way it looks, and seeing it all day long in the workshop and being around it. It's kind of nice to you kind of find moments where it looks good in certain light, and
Mm-hmm.
you know it does really lend itself well to a visual kind of photographed kind of subject.
That's good.
Are you looking at my
Yeah,
Instagram,
yeah.
or are you looking
I'm
at the?
looking. I'm looking at your. I'm just looking at all the social. Yeah, the Instagram is really nice.
Yeah,
Um, hey, have you played around with AI and furniture design?
I have not. No, that's something. I'm a bit of a dinosaur as far as getting onto that. I mean, CNC machines and technology. I'm very absolutely willing to take on, but I haven't got into the AI yet.
Um, so it's funny.
What? What?
So I have a client. He's not a classically trained furniture maker, but
Yep.
he's a force yourself into becoming a furniture maker, right? And
Yeah.
and
Sure.
uh and he's drawn some inspirations, and he's like won an award. He's down in North Carolina, and
Cool.
I did a workshop for a bunch of clients
Wow.
on leveraging AI for furniture design. And
Right.
so you can take a piece of your furniture, or a furniture that a client shows you, is like, I want something like this, because how often are you getting shown Pinterest boards for stuff, right?
Sure. Sure. That's right. Here's the
Yeah.
inspiration. Here's the Google image.
And
Yep.
so you're able to like use things like Chat GPT. They have this thing called Dolly, and then you can use Mid Journey. And what it does is, like, you can upload it, and then it spits back out other variations, and it's text based. So like you can say, okay, I want this and this, like this base, this
Right.
top, I want like an inlay right here, and then it'll
Uh
produce
huh.
something similar. It won't be exact, but like something similar.
Sure.
So I kind of view it as like, it's just a tool. It's not going to necessarily
Sure.
replace, but which is interesting, because the other day on Instagram, my old client, uh, he designed this credenza, and I was like,
Yep.
dude, that looks so good. I said, is that
Yeah.
AI? And he was like, yes, it's an AI design with a
Right.
different base. So like he used two different things and he combined it.
Merge
And
them.
so, and
Wow.
at the same time, like, you can totally create very new original
Wow.
pieces, and
That's
it's
really
meant to
interesting.
just like, you can use it as a you could say, you can do stuff like, the person that taught me this, he's a furniture designer too, and he was saying, like, you can pick different eras and say, like, you
Sure.
know
Yeah, like colonial or
colonial
yeah.
or mid-century, and just like, I want to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
this combination, and you'll just,
Right.
what is going to end up happening is, like, you create something new. You
Right.
literally still have to
Right.
create it. AI is not going to pull
Sure.
out the table
Sure, but
saw.
the software will design it such as you can type in and text your wish list of colonial mid-century table-based credenza,
Exactly.
and it interprets all that into an image,
An
and then
original image, and then
wow.
you can take it, and then what you can end up doing is, like, there's some people on, online things like Fiverr, that will generate uh like
Yeah.
CAD drawings based off of that.
Wow. Yeah.
And then
No,
you can
that's
develop a
cool. I mean,
cutlass. So like, I think, I don't know, somebody
right.
like you would just, I feel like you would have a field day because it would give you'd be
Yeah.
able to work faster. That's the thing. It's like,
Absolutely. I mean, I think I definitely be interested in looking at that because I kind of find myself as a process. If you come to me and say, let's go start a dining table, I start old school with, some chicken scratch
yeah,
sketching, maybe some images online, and we kind of say this is the overall
yeah,
feel, and we can get to CAD drawings pretty quickly. But if you kind of could, put all those in the ingredients bowl and say, look, detail here or tapered leg there,
yeah.
and it comes out as a cool image. That'd be pretty
Absolutely.
cool.
And then you could say like, and set this in, a home on the Gold Coast of, Gold.
Yeah,
And
right.
then it'll
And
literally place it
like,
in a living room in a place that looks like
yeah,
it's in the Gold Coast, like, which is,
yeah.
I,
That's cool too, because I mean, I've felt like I don't know if you can spot these scale models behind me. I've got
yeah,
like these are the kind of things I done when they're extra special
for
clients to
sure.
make a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
mini
yeah, 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 yeah.
and that's actually what kind of sold
Oh,
with
dude,
the president's
like
table.
you with tech would be ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like if you did that, right? Like you use AI to create an original, and then
yeah,
you're able to create the scaled version, and then you have a digital version that you show on a deck, right? And
yeah,
then you
yeah,
can show a picture of what it would look like in a house similar to theirs, and then you
yeah.
show them
Right, yeah.
that,
Put
like,
it into the whole
bro,
setting.
you
Yeah.
could end up charging like twice as much based off of the presentation, right? Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a very important kind of part of getting a job because everyone can go on a website and click I want the walnut table, but if you pitch it like that and it's in the home and it's got all the kind of custom designed
yeah.
elements, that's where it feels super custom and yeah,
I mean, I
absolutely.
always tell people like, how are you giving quotes? Are you giving quotes from like, you know, from like your QuickBooks? Because
Yeah.
if you're not going to put any effort into presenting, then,
No, that's right. Yeah.
you're not going to get what you deserve. Like you're always going
Yeah.
to get
No, that's right.
undervalued, you know?
No, that's right. And I mean, I have a kind of, for me at least, I have a nice template of what my estimate is and my name and my business number and all that.
Yeah,
And it's done and worded in a way which is very considered. It's not just like click template. It's all very kind of
it's
personalized to
personalized. Yeah,
each
yeah,
job,
for sure.
and all the details are there. And that's kind of my contract because you go back to the estimate or the shop drawing and say this is what we're building
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So there's no question marks at the end of the
for
job.
sure. Cool. All right. So this is the part of the podcast where I give you any marketing or business advice. Is there anything that you need help with right now?
I mean, I don't know, Steve. It's a kind of big question. I mean, I suppose I'm always the wife. She's always saying you need to scale up and get bigger and make more money. So that's that's probably it's a big ask. But no, I don't know. I suppose yeah, just finding the kind of right recipe of not. I think what I need to do is get more away from the kind of hands on doing it all myself
Yeah,
and find because there is, like you said, there's only so many hours in the day where I can make this many jobs. So the scaling up is key, um, and that really comes down to kind of getting more labor, but then obviously training people and knowing that they can come up to my level.
yeah,
Um, and I suppose branding and just kind of wanting to kind of I suppose just more recognition, more notoriety of who I am as a furniture maker in Chicagoland. But I feel like no, the recipe's going well, but I probably could just make more money, make more things
yeah,
per year. It's not like that's the kind of calendar year is such that I get this much done,
yeah,
make this bucks, but it's could it all go up a bit?
for sure. Well, I mean, you're probably due for an increase in price, right? Like
That's
you
right.
know,
Yeah, that's what I keep.
I kind of get the sense that that in addition to loving the craft and you care for the folks that you do business with, because like relationships
Yeah.
seem like they are important to you, right? Like
Sure.
maintaining the relationships because you know, and you're probably very loyal to folks, right?
Yeah. No, I am. I
Yeah,
am. Yeah, I've got a handful of designers that trust me and give me a lot of work, and I'm grateful for that. But there is that, yeah, there is that price point where they kind of expect it to be where it is.
yeah.
But
So and I mean, so for me, I was like, I would go on a, I think you're at the level where you are, I would say you're leaving money on the table, right? So I think um, the Obama thing, it
yeah,
happened 10 years ago, but it's still relevant, right? Like it's
yeah, absolutely.
totally still relevant. That's the first thing. The
Yeah,
second thing is the fact that you are essentially a, for lack of a better word, you are a mastercraft, world class furniture maker, right? Like I'll just put
Mhm.
you on that level, right? And here's the reason why. You were trained in Australia by a master craftsman. You
yeah,
worked in London, and then
hmm
you literally made money as a professional in 3 countries,
yeah,
and your work is sent all over the United States.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So yeah, cool. No,
so to me, I'm like, so it's kind of like, the moment you get paid to do something, you're a professional, right?
sure. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
The
Yeah, it's
moment
not just a hobby out of the garage.
the moment that you get paid to do what you do in different cities, you're kind of elite level. If
Yeah,
you do
yeah,
that, if you get paid to do what you do in different cities for as long as you have, you're
yeah.
master level.
Sure. No, that's cool. Good call, Steve. I appreciate
So
that.
when I say that because when you've gotten to a certain point and you've kind of been a little uh, and you've gotten to a certain level, you're comfortable with that certain level. And
Yeah,
the next level beyond that is like literally right there, is about the nurturing and the optimization of your career and your brand.
yeah,
Do you know what I
sure.
mean? So
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
I don't know, how do you say it? So it's like you can go, I mean, I know you're Australian, so like you follow Formula One. I know you do. I know you do, right? You follow Formula One, right? You
Sure.
do, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Regarding.
So you've seen what just recently happened with Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari, right?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, huge money,
Huge
and
money,
yeah,
huge money. Like,
yeah, stupid
so
money.
like, and he went from McLaren to Mercedes, and he was just winning.
Yeah,
And then he had like
now
he had
Ferrari.
2 years, 3 years of not winning a championship. 2 years of not winning a race.
Sure, just back into the mediocre. Yeah,
Just back into the midfield mediocre. But you know what? He's still a 7-time champion.
yeah, yeah,
And at a certain level, he could have he could have continued to stay in the mediocrity that
yeah,
Sebastian Vettel did, that Kimi Räikkönen did, right?
yeah,
Alonso's pushing himself. Like Alonso's really pushing himself. But like,
yeah,
so that to me is like, when you've reached a certain level and you're older. I mean, when you're older, you've got kids, You got life, you got
Yeah.
bills.
Yeah.
You don't want to push it too much because you got the energy level. You're comfortable.
Yeah.
What did Hamilton
Sure.
do? He was like, screw this. I'm going bigger. I'm gonna go for the
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for the money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give
Yeah.
this one
Yeah.
more big shot. And then
Absolutely.
the day that he got gosh, the day that he got the announcement was made that he went to Ferrari,
Yeah.
Ferrari's stock price went up 6%.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
They
Right.
literally made their
Yeah.
money back
No.
in one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for
No,
him,
I said the same thing to my wife. Like, we're in our 40s. Like, we deserve this. This is the prime of our career where
yes,
we don't
yes,
need to like just be like scrounging for the next job.
yes.
You're in like you're like Ronaldo. Go to get the big dollars in the Saudi league. Go
You're
get
like Messi. You're like Messi going to
yeah,
Inter Miami, and
exactly. Just and you deserve it. Like
you
that's the thing
deserve
of
it.
like
You deserve it.
I've been at it for 30 odd years, and there is a lot of next generation kids going through. But I put it down to I've done the hard yards. I've done 30 years of making furniture. And like you say, it's not just trying to stay with market price and being, oh, this is what tables are selling at Room and Board. It's like, this is my Rowan Ward designs.
Forget
And
Roman Wood. Rowan Wood.
yeah,
Even Rowan Wood sounds like it. I mean, it's your name, but it literally sounds like a brand. It sounds like a
yeah,
brand that
yeah,
should be out there even more.
yeah,
So for me,
yeah. No, cool. Yeah, I like it.
I start thinking like branding, more positioning, like aggressively finding more designers, like aggressively,
Yeah,
like you move beyond your name, like move beyond you as an entity, but like this is like Rowan is like
yeah,
Rowan Ward, the brand, like the
totally.
brand.
So, yeah, absolutely.
and
I love it.
and
Yep.
then and then the other part that I see is like, all right, um like how do you increase your outbound, increase your inbound, and then how do you start to like, this is a question I wanted to ask earlier. I was like, how do you create a line?
Yeah, and that's a good one because that is something I've always been like. You go on these fancy kind of designers and you see Rowan Ward at blah blah or Holly Hunt, and they carry on a line of furniture,
Yeah,
and there is a bunch of designs I've kind of milled over for years that I could think this could be a great table with some side tables and an end table, some nightstands, and it could be a Rowan Ward design. So it's something it's always been there, and I've mulled over a handful of processes, but it is that kind of jump of getting into industry where it's turned out in batch production, somewhat maybe mass production, where you find the right
slight,
recipe where it's
slight. Yeah, it's like slight. Like you keep your
yeah,
higher end,
yeah,
like the bespoke
but yeah,
stuff, and then.
yeah,
But the other thing, the other thing too is like you can probably move into the realm of like, like whether it is like finishes or other
yeah,
pieces that go along, like accessory line, like home goods, like,
yep,
you know what I mean? Like
yep, yep,
I just see a brand that
totally,
is a little bit bigger, and if people
yep,
can't necessarily afford your tables, they should be
yeah,
able to get something else that they can afford.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a good call. And I've got some friends who've done. A good friend of mine, she's done this line of stools, and it really like took off as a big production thing, and she was getting hundreds made, and they're getting shipped around the country, and that became her like jam, and it was really cool because she's just standing back watching it all go down. Her name's on it. It's getting branded across the country, and they're selling in Miami, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like you can just that's where you kind of can sit back and feel your product's doing its thing without you doing all the hard work.
Your product is doing its thing without doing all the hard work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And maybe the question for you is like, what is something that you can produce once based off of your 30 years of
yeah,
knowledge that pays you without you having to, maybe risk
yep.
losing a finger?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Which I've done, by the way, Steve. I took the tip off my left
Oh
pinky.
my gosh. Oh my gosh.
That was part of the battle scar of 30 years of woodworker. Stuck it in a planer,
Yeah.
but thankfully left hand, left tip of the pinky. So best case scenario as far as the
Yeah.
digits.
Yeah. That's I'm glad
But
I'm glad you're here to tell that story. So yes.
yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah. I always got to avoid the pointy parts.
Um, why don't you
Yeah, Steve.
why don't you tell everybody your website so they can follow your work?
Yeah, so I'm at www.rowanwarddesigns.com, and then my Instagram handle's at Rowan Ward Designs.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rowan, for your time and for sharing
All
your
right,
story.
Steve.
Your work is beautiful, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Take care. Bye.